Their members do. Well, they couldn't have that. I mean, they could have the whole world collapse. But their special companies are being funded by the American taxpayer. And that's going to stretch in probably to a lot of companies. And, you know, I saw an advertisement, a picture in one of the European publications. And it was in English. And it said, "Where the expletive is my bailout." And I thought it was rather apropos. They didn't have to swear, but they did. That somebody would say, well, gee, everybody's getting bailed out in the financial world. Why aren't I getting bailed out? Why am I getting kicked out of my house? Why did house prices collapse? Why did all my commercial real estate investments collapse? Why did my 401k and my pension plan lose 50 or 60% of its value? And so people are unhappy. But they don't understand. And if you tell them, they don't want to understand. And you listen to the stockbrokers say, hey, this has happened before, and it's all going to recover, and everything's going to be just hunky-dory. And maybe that might have worked in the past, but we've never had anything quite like this before. And this is going to make the 1930s look real easy. And you should be preparing for it. And you want to have some extra dehydrated and freeze-dried foods and a filter and something to protect your home. And you got to have those gold and silver coins. And it's very important because when push comes to shove, it's the only thing that you're going to have of real value.
It's interesting, Bob, when you hear people talk about the Depression, the comparison with the Depression, I mean, they really only relate to, the first few years of it, and the Depression went on a very long time. And I can't remember what year that actually peaked. It was in the mid-30s, I believe. And but everyone just talks about 29 and, the big crash, and maybe and 33 is referenced a lot. So it certainly goes on a lot longer than as this one will also. And it's just not over in a year or two.
In 1940, unemployment was, let me think in my mind what that figure was. I know in 39, it was 16.4%. And in 1940 it was 16.4. And in 1939, it was about 19-something. They had to come down from around 30%. But the economy wasn't out of the woods. It did. The 45% increase by government in spending, it just really didn't work. And that's why the United States was so desperate to get into war. Because you get into war, people forget about, are not as concerned about economic and financial issues, or any kind of issues, except the fact, they're being shipped over to Tarawa, or they're going to invade France. They're more worried about whether they're going to die or not. And of course, that's a culling process for the people behind the scenes. They get rid of people, and they think that's a great idea. And so America never came out of the Depression. It's as simple as that. They did not recover. They were bailed out by another war, and that's why it's so easy for me to predict that Pakistan will be invaded and occupied, and Iran will be invaded. And while this is going on, which may become a third world war and a nuclear war, everybody in the United States is not going to be worried about what's going on in the economy. They're going to be worried about their children and grandchildren getting slaughtered in some battlefield over in the mountains of East Asia or West Asia. And so that's the game that's played over and over and over. And, you don't have to be any kind of a intelligent person to figure it out. All you have had done is to read history. It's all there. And you get the same gang doing the same thing.
Well, we got some questions. Do you have any that you wanted to start out first, or?
Yeah, I got a couple. Actually, I got 3. And I haven't even read them, but I pulled them off the computer. The first one is from George. Gold embedded into dollar. Question for the illustrious diva. That's all right. What is your opinion about gold being embedded into paper money? You have the convenience of paper bills along with it being backed by gold. I don't know if such technology exists, but I think it would be a great way to get back to sound money, and this would also prevent banks from cheating as they have done in the past history, thanks to fractional reserve banking. I just came off a program on the Fox network, and I talked about fractional banking. And this whole problem we've got, and this is just an aside from the question, is because of fractional banking. The bankers were not happy to keep it at 8 or 10 to 1. They lend out $8 or $10 for every one they have on deposit. They went up to 50, 60, 70 to 1. No, they're not suicidal. So I think they did it deliberately. And they made a lot of money over the last 8 or 10 years, probably 7 years. Made incredible amounts of money. Just as an example, 4 years ago, the government allowed transnational corporations under the ruse of creating jobs to bring back money to the United States. And it was $350 billion they brought back. That's 4 years ago. They paid 5.25% taxes instead of 33%. It was a sweetheart deal. They now have $700 billion. So those corporations in the last 4 years have made $700 billion that's offshore. And they really don't have to bring it back, nor... I think the net amount is they might pay 2% taxes on it. And that shows you some of the things that go along with go on in these large corporations, and the leverage that's been used not only by banks but by all sorts of corporations to make an awful lot of money. Anyway, embedding gold into paper money, I think it's doable. I think the technology exists, and I see nothing wrong with it. And so if a $1 bill has a grain in it, then it's got a grain in it. And I think anybody who was a recipient wouldn't want to tear it up and lose their grain of gold and the value of the dollar. So I think that's something that's doable. Next, I'm getting conflicting reports on the H1N1 virus. Dr. Bill Deagle, on another talk show, is reporting that the true confirmed death in Juarez, Mexico, is over 1,000, and that the seriousness of this virus is being hushed up to allow it to spread. What have I heard? I have heard nothing of the kind. I do not believe that. And it looks like in the next day or so that the Mexican government is going to start lifting, we'll call them the sanctions that they put on. And it'll probably happen today or tomorrow. And so I don't think they'd be lifting them if it was getting worse, or they had those thousands of deaths that Dr. Deagle's talking about. I just, if anything, I would think that they want to exaggerate the figures so they wouldn't look like a bunch of fools, because they were calling this a giant epidemic, and when in fact it was just another strain of flu that killed a handful of people, which flu normally does. You know, I was told by somebody in Mexico City that there's some cities that have no experience with this disease, Nobody wears face masks. And they go along with their regular business, the only exception being people were asked to stay home rather than go out, which most of them did. And the schools were closed for about 3 extra days. And so I find that hard to believe. Okay, my last question comes from somebody named Thanks. And I forgot to put their name down. And since there are no gold stocks traded in the Indian stock market, do you think it makes sense to convert the Indian rupee to the U.S. dollar and then buy gold stocks in the U.S. market?